The following presentation provides an overview of the draft recommendations for the Public Road Corridor Plan. The recommendations were prepared with the Friends of Public Road Working Group. That working group developed this vision statement in advance of preparing any of the recommendations. The vision statement is public road is an inviting place that is safe and accessible to everyone. In addition to the vision statement, the Friends of Public Road Working Group prepared two goals. The first goal was to update the infrastructure to meet the changing needs in downtown. And the second goal was to maintain a family-friendly and business-supportive walking environment. So the following corridor plans reflect not only that vision, but also the goals to get to that vision. The recommendations that you're about to see were developed beginning in January of this year, all the way through the end of June. There were several working group meetings. The working group was actually publicized for anybody in the city of Lafayette to be a part of. And in January 28th, those notifications went out both in English and Spanish. And then the project team walked the corridor to solicit information about the working group and get the interest level and see if people would want to participate. Based on that, we had a walking tour where we also allowed people to submit applications. And that was done in February. 28 applications were received and 17 people were selected for the Friends of Public Road Working Group. A pretty diverse background in terms of who's represented in that group. There were several meetings. This was the first meeting where the participants were able to work on a series of mapping and identify not only vision and goals that you just saw, but key areas that the study should address. In April, when they met, they used a toolkit of parts that allowed for different alternatives to be developed for the corridors. They got to use those toolkit of parts on the maps. And then at the end of that meeting, we quantified what parts were most interesting to everybody to begin to explore further with the corridor designs. Based on that, the project team brought some draft corridor plans at a very high level to the meeting. And the working group was able to give feedback on those high-level concepts and alternatives. Based on that, what you're about to see are the recommended designs that were presented at the July public workshop, will be slightly refined and brought to City Council for the August presentation. The first is what happens north of Emma. So this is the section between Emma and Baseline. The idea is to remove the traffic signals at Simpson and Emma and add four-way stops at those intersections. In addition to that, we're going to install new stop signs and what are called RRFBs at Cannon and Chester. RRFBs are essentially the flashing pedestrian crosswalks that you see at the Geneseo intersection today. So we're going to do those at Cannon and Chester. The entire corridor will get new asphalt, and there will be new crosswalk striping at the intersections. There'll be 8 new on-street parking spaces added, and there'll be additionally 2 new ADA, or what was formerly called handicap spaces, added on-street in the corridor. We're adding a new motorcycle scooter corral, which allows for on-street parking, and then we're adding 11 new walk and wheel corrals. So these are corrals that are on-street that allow bikes to be parked in a space, and this allows for bikes to not be parked on the sidewalks and to keep those sidewalks clear. So the design of north of Emma not only adds on-street parking, it adds scooter parking, motorcycle parking, and it adds bike parking, and it makes some changes to the existing intersection design. South of Emma, so this is the zone between Emma and South Boulder Road, the traffic signal will be removed at Spalding and a four-way stop will be added there. New asphalt will be laid down as part of this project. In addition to that, there'll be new crosswalk striping. In this zone, there'll be 34 new on-street parking spaces. There'll be 1 new ADA parking space, and then one of these new motorcycle corrals where up to 3 motorcycle or scooters can park. In this zone, there'll actually be 10 new bike racks. In this zone here, there's more space on street, or rather more space for bikes in the zone between the parked cars and the sidewalk. North of Emma, there's just not space. It's a very tight, constrained corridor between buildings. And then so south of Emma, there's more space between the sidewalk and the on-street parking, so we're proposing 10 new bike racks in that zone. I mentioned the walk and wheel corrals. Here's just an example of them. They occupy the space where a car was, and they allow for bikes and scooters to be locked in parks. Burley trailers can fit into the zone. And the idea is that we are net positive in terms of parking for everybody with this project. So there's more on-street parking, there's more motorcycle parking, there's more scooter parking, and then there's more walk and wheel parking. I mentioned that term RRFB, actually stands for Rectangular Rapid Flash Beacon. It's basically a technical term for one of those pedestrian activated crossings. There's one today in the corridor at Geneseo in front of the collective, and we're proposing, as you saw those, at Cannon and Chester as part of this design. Not only are we proposing the lighting, but we're proposing some additional signage and awareness for people who are both motoring and walking and wheeling through those intersections. So what's the timeline for this? We developed a 3-year implementation plan for these draft recommendations. They begin this fall, and they go all the way to the fall of 2021. The first is Simpson Street. So the idea with Simpson Street is to remove the traffic signal and to add in 4-way stops. Simpson Street's right in front of the new Black Diamond restaurant. And so this is proposed for this fall. In addition to removing the traffic signals and adding the 4-way stop, we're going to remove the turn lanes here. And when we remove the turn lanes, this allows us to add some more on-street parking back into this area. So we're going to add some new on-street parking in the area. In addition to adding some new on-street parking, we're going to add 2 walk and wheel corrals to get a sense of how the design works, get some public feedback on that design. So this design this fall is a $25,000 project and should take about 5 days to implement. The other thing that we are proposing for this fall is to work at Emma. So at Emma, a similar concept. We're going to remove the traffic signals and add 4-way stops. And then we're going to add walk and wheel corrals, not right at the intersection, but a little bit further back. And so this intersection cost here is about $25,000 and has a 5-day timeline. After the fall of this year, we'll move into the spring of 2019, and this will be a larger project that will require grinding and installing new asphalt on public road. Once we do that, we can install the new crosswalks at the intersections noted here. We can install the additional walk and wheel corrals, and then we can install the 50 new on-street parking spaces and possibly up to 15 new ADA spaces, and then the motorcycle corrals. And we're still working on plans for how we could get bulb outs into those designs. Basically, bulb outs are where you extend the crosswalk out a little bit further where there's not parking at the intersection. So the person who's making the crossing has a shorter distance. This project is about 70% already funded. The overlay project was funded in prior City Council authorizations. So when we go into August meeting with City Council, we're going to ask for an additional funding to do the crosswalks and the walk and wheel corrals and some of the additional striping costs for on-street spaces. So that project would be the spring of 2019. In the fall of 2019, we would replace the stop signs with these rectangular rapid flash beacons. And so the stop signs that are on the east and west side would remain, as you see in this diagram, but vehicles traveling north and south on public road would just be stopped if there was someone crossing and they activated the signal. So those would be in place in the fall of 2019. And then in the spring of 2020, we worked south in the corridor at Spalding, remove the traffic signal at Spalding, and add a 3-way stop. And in addition to that project, we'd be able to add some more on-street parking there. And then in the spring of 2020, we'd begin to work on the street design in terms of the landscaping and lighting and placards and banners. And so that would be baseline to Cleveland in the spring of 2020. And then in the following year, going from Cleveland to Emma in 2021. All of these can be accelerated with some help from the Lafayette Urban Renewal Authority, LURA, and they're in conversations with the Friends of Public Road Working Group, and they're trying to formulate a plan that may be able to accelerate some of these features further ahead. So in summary, the 3-year implementation schedule and budget has Simpson and Emma changes this fall in 2018. And then a corridor overlay project with a lot of the on-street parking and walk and wheel corrals and new crosswalk features in 2019. And remember, that project is 60 to 70% funded already, so the additional money would be coming from a new council authorization. And then the 2020 and 2021 projects have not been funded yet and are further along in the conversation, or rather it would be a culmination of the Friends of Public Road Working Group and LURA getting together to talk through those. So that is a summary of the draft recommendations.